Crazy weekend. If you're a Dutch fan, orange is your color. I don't know that papaya is, but it was a 23-second victory by Lando Norris over hometown favorite Max Verstappen in Zandvoort this weekend. Tim Rainey, great race, I think, all around. Lots of interesting things, including Valtteri Bottas surprising everybody off the start, and then that car is just not good. But I want to start at the start. I want to start exactly where I think everybody was looking at Lando Norris and going, listen, if he's going to win this race, he's going to have to win it on the first lap. And he didn't. And that didn't end up mattering. But Tim, Lando's getting a lot of heat for his poor starts. And starting there, you think potentially it may not be all his fault.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily all on Lando. I mean, it is something that he has been really working on in the sim, especially because obviously, I mean, you can't take these cars out during the summer break and start practicing your starts. But you can use other cars to practice starts and things like that. But it's so different from a Formula One car because the teams actually set up different parameters, like on the steering wheel and things to do with the gearbox, and how much torque you're getting off the line and how much revs you need to apply. And then the second phase of your start, that also is programmed at the same time. Now, the teams can't just set it so it's like a launch where it's just like you leave your left foot on the brake pedal and then you just, dump your foot into the throttle as the lights go out. It's not like that. The driver has to match the revs with how they're feeling and then use the clutch on the steering wheel to slowly let this thing go. Because like when I was doing standing starts, it was super easy, man. You had, because there was three pedals, but the gearbox was sequential. So you didn't need the clutch at all, but on the starts you did. And all basically you had to do is, left foot matted with the clutch. I used like my right foot and toes on the brake pedal. I used my heel on the accelerator to bring up the revs. So the reason I used my right foot on the top of my right foot on the brake pedal, like my toes, is to just stop the car from like rolling.
Okay.
Because the car will like have some inertia when you're putting that much energy like through the drivetrain. And then as soon as the lights go out, you just literally throw your foot off of the clutch and you I would dump my heel directly into the gas pedal, and you get some wheel spin. Mm-hmm. But since it's like an F1 car and things are way different now and there's so much more technology, it's like you can't do that. You really have to feather everything, and you can't just go and mash the gas pedal, even in that second phase. So when you're pulling away from the line and you're banging through the gearbox, you can't just dump your foot into it because there's still so much torque and energy coming through the drivetrain. And as a driver, you can feel that.
Wow.
Like you can feel it with your ass, like just how much you kind of need to apply the gas pedal or the accelerator. And then once you really feel the thing hook up, and this is all, we're talking like this is happening within tenths of a second kind of thing, but once you can feel it all. But once you really feel the car like hook up and it's ready to go, you just mat it, right? For Lando and Oscar, they both had really poor getaways. And it's not like Oscar to have a poor getaway.
No, he's usually pretty good on it.
Yeah, he's usually pretty good on it. And they're also on the clean side of the track, right, Adam? Like they're not on the dirty side. And so Lando also laid down a pretty good patch before he did his standing start. Like on the formation lap, he laid down a good one, which is going to provide you with a little extra traction. And even considering you're on the clean side of the track, that's going to help you. And Piastri did the same. And it's in that second phase where they're losing them. And in that second phase, I think there is some programming there that needs to be done. I mean, we'll see what the team has to say after they go through everything. But I have a feeling it's that particular start wasn't all on Lando. I really don't.
Okay.
But like, I mean, you made a good point. Like when Verstappen took the lead, I think a lot of us were like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah. Oh, well, of course. And listen, we could be forgiven for feeling that way. That's what it's been for 2.5, 3 years. I mean, like, what else are we supposed to think? But it didn't end up being that way. And it's interesting. I think it was like lap 18 that he got by, and then it was
17 or something like
that.
Yeah,
bye.
Isn't around there. And
it was bye Lando. And I think there's a clip that's going around on X/Twitter that Scott McLaughlin from IndyCar actually commented on. And it's like, Max has been complaining about the balance of the car, which was an issue this weekend. But there's this clip where he's turning the steering wheel and the wheels aren't turning. And you're like, wow, that feels like what Nicholas Latifi was complaining about with the Williams car 3 years ago when it actually didn't turn. There were parts of that steering wheel that didn't work properly, which is kind of crazy in retrospect. But Scott had a really funny point, which was he was loose going into that sector, meaning that there's no grip for the tires to turn on. And therefore, now Alexander Rossi, Tim, told him to go to bed. And Scott said, I can't, which I thought was hilarious. But, what are you seeing? Leave McLaren for a second. What are you seeing with Red Bull? Obviously, Perez having a better, afternoon. That's great. What are you seeing with this Red Bull car that it is now not performing to the level? Jos Verstappen even said, Red Bull's got to look at themselves in the mirror because, Max doesn't have the support and doesn't have the car to get this done necessarily.
Yeah, he's got a point because, they've really gone backwards in their development, Adam. Like it hasn't, and we talked about this in the last podcast, like their execution of their updates they haven't been hitting any home runs here. It's not like McLaren where they've been really patient with what they're bringing. And then once they bring it, it actually it works. Like they're figuring something out. It's either in CFD or if it's in the wind tunnel, who knows? It could be using different belts in the wind tunnel as well to kind of simulate rougher pavement. We don't know. But outside of all that, this weekend, Verstappen was running like an old floor, like on his car, and Sergio was running the newer components. And, I would argue, Adam, this was a bad race for Sergio. It just wasn't good. It wasn't. It was a good qualifying. Mm-hmm. It was not the greatest practice sessions. Yeah. So a little up and down for him. But, it's good to see he is trending in the direction that they want him to be. But in the race, he had to be better. And you're also giving him new components. So it's not really working. Like their components are not working the way they want them to. Because if the components are working, then I don't see Sergio dropping back like he did. I see him at least maintaining position and not having as much tire deg as he did towards the end of the race. Or he's moving forward and the tire's able to last a lot longer, something to which McLaren is doing right now. And how they're doing so well with that tire deg. And so I think, Adam, there is a huge, huge thing there that they need to learn from running these different components on the car. And that's what they wanted to do. That was the goal, was to run these two cars differently and to see the data that they got from it, to see where they're going wrong. And so I think they learned quite a bit this weekend. But even though they learned quite a bit this weekend, we have to ask the question, is this something that's already baked into the DNA of the car?
Yeah. And is there enough time, even if you could develop a part for this season? Because I could see next season, but we're already well into probably a month or more into development for the cars for next season, if not further.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely. Teams are now starting to look at the 2025 car and getting ahead of that schedule as much as possible so they can be ready to do 2026.
Yeah.
And so they can make that jump really quickly. And that's going to be crucial for every team's development. So for those who are new to Formula One or just getting started, the cars, there are going to be some development on these cars. It's not going to be a huge amount because some of their wind tunnel time, CFD time, cost cap, they're going to start putting that towards 2025 car so they can get ahead with that car, so they can be ahead for the 2026 regulation. It's once you start getting backed up and you've gone the wrong direction with your upgrades that you have to make the call. Like, do you just sacrifice the whole season and say, well, the hell with it. We're going to have a poor season for the rest of this 2024, but we need to focus on 2025 so we can make that gap up and be ready for 2026. So that's the development path or plan that they're kind of looking at. For Red Bull and McLaren in particular, I'm interested to know just how much cost cap each team has left and also how much wind tunnel time they have left as well. Heard from Andrea Stella following the race, they're still going to develop this car this season. Like, they're still going to bring components to it. They're bringing more components to it for Monza, like bigger components. And they had a huge upgrade for this weekend. It was massive. I would say Miami was the biggest. This was probably the second biggest. So they're not playing around. They are after this Constructors' Championship. But for Red Bull, it's kind of like, okay, well, did they dump all of their resources, time into, like going back to last year, did they dump all their time, money, resources at him into developing this car for the start of the season? And to know that, hey, we're going to build up a huge gap in the first few races, but someone may start to catch up to us, and it's just damage limitation from here on out.
Yeah.
And I tend to think that that's the direction that they've gone in, but they may not have built up enough damage limitation points in either championship.
Yeah. Well, so it was, I think people were saying, like, if Lando won every race and Max came second in every race, then Lando would have to get fastest lap, I think, too. He would win by like a point. So, you know, for the driver's side of things, and I think it was Andrea Stella, I believe, that was commenting on the fact, he's like, yeah, maybe we can pull a Vettel 2013 or whatever?
2013.
Yeah, everyone, like every single race.
After the summer break. Yeah.
And and with a car that finished 23 seconds up, you think it's possible. For sure, it's got to be possible. So, obviously, McLaren are targeting the constructors' title. Do you think they're going to get serious about the driver's title as well?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
You do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
but that means that this whole thing about, you know, Oscar, Lando moving to the side for Oscar, that's going to be gone now. That has to be gone now.
I would think so. I mean, it was interesting because Stella was asked about this following the race. And, you know, his answer is kind of, he never said yes or no to it, but his answer was, we have team orders, and I'm paraphrasing. We have team orders before we start every race.
Right.
And whatever those team orders are based off of, that's what they go on for the race. And my understanding from that would have to be whoever takes the lead or whoever's out in front first gets priority.
Right.
But if Oscar starts out qualifying Lando, let's say he's getting P1s or he's getting pole positions and Lando's qualifying second, I mean, what happens then, right? So I think this is on Lando Norris to be picture perfect and be the best that he can be for the remainder of this season. Stella believes that he can be a world champion. He sees qualities in Lando that are world champion pedigree, but I just seeing him, hearing him, looking at the body language, it's almost like we need to try and find a way. And I don't know if this is true or not, but this is just my thoughts. It's maybe we need to find a way of pushing Lando even more so he is the best that he can ever be. Something to, like, you know, Verstappen, right? Where this guy, like, Max is like bulletproof, man. Like, that car is it's not good right now.
No, I think if you're looking at a normal, like a very good driver, it's a sixth place car. Look at Sergio Perez, right?
Yeah.
But if Max isn't driving that, is Ferrari not beating both Red Bulls?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, as much as they didn't love their car on Saturday, Ferrari, for whatever reason, grabbed a few tenths on Sunday. And I think it's because it's a better in-race car than it is qualifying. And I don't know if that has to do with strategy, which Ferrari nailed, or tire degradation or whatever. But even Oscar Piastri couldn't get around Leclerc. I wonder if it's not Max in that car, what that car is going to be able to do. And that's my whole point in saying that, is what Max is walking on water even now. And people just don't realize it, right?
Yes. He's incredible right now. Like, I can't believe he got P2 in qualifying on Saturday. Like, I was thinking he's maybe going to get P5, P4, just because I was seeing how strong Mercedes was at the beginning of the weekend, and they kind of like tailed off, but obviously we'll get into them a little later. But it was the fact that he was able to usurp Lando in Q3, and then Lando just came back and absolutely smashed him. Yep. But no one could catch up to Lando, which he was just on another level, but so was Max. Then that just shows you the deficit of the car.
Yeah.
as well, right? Like
Yep.
they're just missing that whatever 2 to 3 tenths in quali, and then in the race, I mean, obviously running some older components, you're going to be giving up performance, but again, the car still just doesn't look good. Like even with like Bahrain components on it, Adam, it still just looked like crap. Like it just didn't look good.
Yeah.
And he's making this thing work.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not for Max Verstappen, Adam, in that car, I mean, like you said, and I agree with you, it's a P6 car.
Yeah, and so with that, Max is kind of making Ferrari look bad here. But I want to say that I think that people have been very hard on Ferrari, and they should. They do need to take a step forward. It is Ferrari.
Yeah.
I thought they looked really good this weekend, and I know qualifying wasn't the greatest for them. But you talk about a race car like setting them up perfectly for Monza and the Tifosi, and they're going to be out in full force. Fernando Alonso said, like, Ferrari, the way their car's set up, it's built for a track like Monza.
Oh, yeah.
I thought we saw Charles Leclerc be the Charles Leclerc we saw in 2022. Like, do you know what I mean? Like where he was like, it's him versus Max. Like that was a dominant performance to keep Oscar off his back, I thought. Yeah,
he was great. I mean, I think the whole team was great. Executing that strategy that they had set out before the race started, it was funny. I mean, Leclerc was like on Saturday, and we'd need a miracle to get a podium. And
he did it.
Yeah, that miracle came, buddy. Don't you worry. Just executing that strategy alone with Oscar putting as much pressure on him as he did, really impressive. Not a mistake made from Leclerc in that high pressured situation. I mean, Charles looked really confident during the race, which is good to see. I mean, it's better. I mean, you may not, they don't have a great qualifying car right now, but this proves that they have a good race car.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important moving forward. It's important for a number of reasons. One, I mean, you want to try and get as many points as you can, obviously. But two, it's confirming that the direction you're taking the car in is working, because races used to be a bit of a struggle for Ferrari since we entered this regulation.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're starting to see it where, okay, qualifying is a bit of an issue, but our race car is looking quite strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so once they've figured that part of it out, and this is something that McLaren did, was the fact that qualifying wasn't very good for them, but they had a decent race. They had a really good race car. And then they built on top of that and eventually turned into an all-around really strong car. It needs to be the same for Ferrari. It looks like it's going to be the same for Ferrari, and that's important because you've got Lewis Hamilton coming to your team next season. You've spent a lot of money to get Lewis there, and you want to make sure you're going to have a competitive car for him when he arrives. So that, I think, has to be the focus, obviously, is trying to get this car back on the right track, and it really does, Adam, look like that. And then you have to factor all of that into Constructors' Championship and Drivers' Championship, because if Ferrari starts to come on really strong here, they're going to take points away from Max.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
Yeah,
like it's like that's where I think Red Bull really needs to watch out, because it's not just Max there, it's Sergio too, mm-hmm. right? Where you're in they are in a constructors battle,
yes.
and they are still ahead.
Yes.
And if Sainz and Leclerc keep finishing ahead of Perez, it's going to be a huge problem for them.
Huge problem. Huge. And Ferrari's not that far back, right?
No, they're not.
And so I think when you look at this big picture, I think then you start distilling it down to like driver lineups, mm-hmm. right? And I really hate beating on Sergio Perez here like this. I really don't like doing that. But he is at this moment, he is the weakest out of Oscar and Lando, Charles and Carlos, Max and Sergio.
Yeah. I'd even say George and Lewis, too.
George and Lewis, absolutely.
Who didn't have a great weekend. But
exactly. But when they do have a great weekend, we've seen how strong Mercedes gets it when they get it. And that's what it's going to be like going forward. And we've been talking about this way for the last, I don't know how many races, Adam. So It's going to be exciting, man. These last 9 races, man, are going to be great. I'm so excited for this.
Mercedes ended before the summer break on a high. For them to finish 7-8, I'm sure that earlier in the season they would have taken that. They would have taken that. I don't think that's where they're at now. I don't think that they can be happy walking away from Zandvoort like that. I don't know if it's the car that didn't lend itself to the track. What do you think happened with Mercedes this weekend?
Yeah, I heard from Toto following the race, and it sounds like they're not sure if it's some components they had put on the car for this weekend that has kind of taken them in the wrong direction. And I think it has something to do with the floor on the Mercedes that he was kind of, talking about in generality. So I have a feeling it has something to do with that. And then obviously when you don't qualify well, like Lewis had a really difficult qualifying session on the Saturday, you really put yourself on the back foot because Lewis was quick in the race.
Yeah.
And so I think hard to say. I mean, because Lewis and George are so close that I wonder if Lewis had qualified better, I wonder, and didn't get a penalty, I wonder if that would have been more of like a P4, P5 finish.
Yeah, up there with Carlos and Sergio, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was like kind of thinking. Like if that had been the case.
To support your point from earlier, Tim, about the Red Bull side of this, and I know we're talking about Mercedes, but if Lewis and George are having a good weekend, God forbid they have a good weekend together. Where does that put Sergio? Right? Where does that put Red Bull in the constructors? Right? And Max is exposed. Nobody to defend his back. Right? It's a tricky thing that Red Bull finds themselves in. And I think beyond that, the attitude in the garage hasn't been great. Not that the team aren't working hard or they don't love each other or whatever. I'm not making accusations like that. But at the top, you have Verstappen versus Horner versus Marco. There's been peace, at least between Marco and Horner, but Verstappen Senior, that is, said again this weekend, he had those comments about Red Bull's got to figure this out. I wonder if all of that is sort of wearing away, and if they didn't miss an opportunity, even if Daniel Ricciardo isn't the long-term fix. I almost wonder even just bringing a good attitude into the garage and someone who's a lot of fun, and even if it's for just 10 races, if they didn't miss an opportunity to inject a little bit of excitement and fresh blood into that garage.
Yeah, it's that pressure, right, Adam? You can just feel it. You can, and Red Bull's always really good at not letting that get to them, like not allowing pressure to really affect anything to which they do. But it does really seem like this is starting to get to them as a whole, just because of how strong McLaren has started this season. I mean, they were worried. Lando's last lap of this Dutch Grand Prix, setting the fastest lap on tires that were over 35 laps old, hard compounds too, and absolutely just shattering the fastest lap.
Yeah.
That's got the team worried. That has Red Bull Racing worried. They're worried. And they should be. That was look, it's not always going to be like this for McLaren. It may be like this for someone else. It could be like this for Ferrari. It could be like this for Mercedes moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're under pressure. They're under threat. Their Constructors' Championship is under threat, and potentially their Drivers' Championship as well. So there is a lot of pressure on Red Bull to figure this thing out, try and get the car back on the right track, and see where they land. But I don't know, Adam. I mean, just looking at body language alone, that they do not look good. I'm not crazy in picking that up.
Where I actually really do think, and listen, maybe Sergio goes into tear, starts getting podiums again, and I could be wrong here, but I really feel like, not because he's not a great guy, but a driver switch there just to me made a ton of sense. It really just, I think they need new, you got a driver who's fighting for his life in that garage. You got a driver who's the best in the world at the moment, who is probably not thrilled with how things have gone behind the scenes. I think you need Christian, I think, made a mistake. I do. I think he made a mistake there.
It's a tough one to call, right, Adam? Because it's not like Sergio doesn't know how to drive, all right? And if you can just get him to get his confidence back and get him comfortable and consistent with the car, I'm like, he'll be there. Like, he'll be right there. He'll be able to do the job that he needs to do. It's weighing up, and we talked about this. Like, it's just weighing up. Like, if you brought a new driver in, how long does it take that driver to get comfortable, get up to speed, get the car where they need it, and be competitive with Max? Like that, it's like, where does that fall? Like, you could have had this weekend, instead of Sergio qualifying, what was he, P5, I think it was? You could have had a new driver qualifying P8, and then in the race drop back 2 positions to P10. So, I mean, there's so much that goes into just throwing in a new driver and being like, go quickly. It's like, well, it doesn't work that way. Okay.
Yeah, fair. That's the outsider me perspective, right? Like, just get some vibes. I think they just need vibes, man. How do they get vibes?
Some vibes?
Well, they do. They need vibes. I want to talk to you about Pierre Gasly, because he's made that Alpine do something.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, not bad, right?
Not bad at all.
Not bad for that Alpine.
Yeah, that Alpine has gotten stronger and stronger as we've moved through this season, Adam. I mean, I think for me, Spa, like the Belgian Grand Prix, is the race where I was like, ooh, okay, yep. Alpine's coming back here.
Yep.
They've managed to ditch a lot of weight on the car. Updates that they brought are working. And I think you pair that with 2 really good drivers in Gasly and Ocon, you're going to get something.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see that, because, like, I love, like, a bit of an underdog, right? Like, start of the season, you know,
they were bad. They were McLaren
horrible.
Last season bad.
Horrible. Like, just so bad on so many levels. I mean, granted, they're probably losing a couple tenths just in terms of power unit. But when you look at what they've done with the car, I mean, and considering the amount of turmoil that's been going on behind the scenes at that team and in the factories and everything, like it really, really impressive performances from the team and also from the drivers as well.
No, they are killing it. I thought, I think Esteban, I think the world of Esteban as a driver. I really do think he's great. Gasly, it seems like he has confidence. Times where he's confident and he's great. Times where he's not confident and he's really not great when he's not. But he seems to have something with this car. He figured it out. Another one I wanted to mention are Alonso and Lance Stroll. Obviously, they both qualified in the top 10 and got into Q3. But, only one finishes with points. Where does Aston Martin go from here? You were talking earlier about, like, we're at the point of the year where some teams will kind of give up and focus on next year. What do you get that sense from them? Does that make sense for Aston Martin?
I don't think they're giving up. I think they brought an update a few races ago, and it looks like it's improved the car for quali. Both Lance and Fernando did quite well in qualifying, better than I think a lot of the other teams thought they were going to do. And both drivers, I think, are driving a car that's it's just not very good. Like, it's not a good car right now. But both drivers are doing a good job of making it work. I mean, I think if you're putting 2 other drivers in there who, aren't up to that level of talent, I mean, they're struggling to get that thing into the top 10 for sure. Like, qualifying, I mean. I think both of these guys have done a really good job all season with qualifying a car that's really not, like, user friendly at all. Right. And then also in some races, they've managed to eke out points where they probably shouldn't be getting points at all. I mean, this weekend, I don't think that car was a point scoring car. I don't think Alonso
managed it.
And I don't think it's going to be a point scoring car in Monza either. And there's probably not going to be another update to this thing for a little bit. I mean, I don't know, maybe Singapore, but depending on what that is, I don't know. And what that looks like, I mean, who knows? They've really gone in the wrong direction with their development this season. It's just been
rough,
really bad. So hopefully they can find a way of turning things around and getting themselves, back on the track that, that'll allow them to start 2025 strongly. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, both drivers are doing their job. That's for sure. It's just, man, this car is just not good.
Yeah. Nico Hulkenberg with another great weekend as well. Finished 10th, got points. Hulkenberg finished 11th, did not get points.
Yeah.
That's what but he continues to impress, and I feel bad for him because I look at what happened with Valtteri Bottas, having a nice little surprise start and then, falling back to P19. Hulkenberg is not stepping into a great driver program next year in terms of what that car is supposed to be. The tire degradation's bad. The speed's not great.
Leaving where Haas is going, right, Adam? Haas is on a really good.
They're on their way up.
Yeah, and it's like he's going from a team that's going up to a team that's like just going back. So, yeah, that's going to be a really challenging. That's going to be a really challenging job for him. Like going to Sauber next season, it will be. He's going to be frustrated. There's no question about it.
Do you think Audi, which now owns Sauber, do you think they're going to be like, hey guys, before we flip to Audi, can we get our crap together? I know that we've got a regulation coming, but
that's what they're trying to do, right? Bringing in Binotto and getting Jonathan Wheatley over. That's what they're trying to do it. I do have to commend Audi for taking the reins of this thing. Where at one point it kind of looked like, we're going to dabble. No, we need to go all in. So it's good to see that. It's definitely going to help. It'll definitely get the car back up to speed for sure. It'll definitely energize the factory as well as the workers. So I think, Adam, it's going to be a while for sure for this team to be competitive, but I can see, next season, maybe halfway point. Possibly the focus has to be 2026 and getting this thing ready to go for then, right? It has to be. And then, because this weekend was really bad for them.
It was.
They went backwards.
They did. And you didn't think it could get any worse, and yet here we are.
Oh, man. And Magnussen as well. I got to talk about this because, doing the same, how Magnussen held everybody up in Saudi Arabia to allow Hulkenberg to score the point. There were parts where I was like, yeah, okay, I'm good with that. That's okay. But there were some points where I'm surprised that the stewards did not invest, race control and the stewards did not investigate him in some parts of that track where he was holding up, I think it was Albon and a couple other drivers behind him. It was, I don't want to say it was dangerous, but it was borderline. It was getting there.
Sure. And he is a guy that'll push it to the limit, and he's fighting for a job.
They're fast corners, Adam, where he was doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't do that. You don't do that in the fast stuff. You just don't. I don't care about the slow stuff.
Do you think it's just desperation, Tim? I will do anything, and I want to show these teams that I can still do this?
Possibly. It could be. I don't know what the mindset is for it, but he's trying to play the team game. I respect that. It's just pick and choose when you're going to be doing it, kind of thing. That's my thing.
I rarely hear you say stuff like that. I rarely hear you get even when Esteban Ocon hit Pierre Gasly at Monaco. You were like, yeah, I can see how he, there were people in the comments who were like, I can't believe Tim would say, well, it's because Tim's a driver, right? You're going to have a different perspective than the fan who looks at that and goes, objectively, that's idiotic.
It's also not a corner they're doing 300 kph in.
Yes.
And just backing off.
When we talk about something like that, it's really fascinating when you kind of zero, because you're always, I think, very fair to the drivers. And when you say something like that, I'm like, better take note. That's fascinating. So do you think maybe the other drivers on the podium or not on the podium, on the grid who were held up by him are probably a little upset about it today?
For sure. They better be. That's I get it. If there is a strategic way of doing it where it's fairly safe, then yeah, go for it. I don't care. But when you're in the fast stuff and you're doing stuff like that, people don't understand. We sit there and we watch this stuff on television and we're all sitting there on our couches yeah, I can do that. Yeah, it doesn't look that fast. And it's let me tell you something. I got news for you. You go strap your ass to that thing on a rocket that's can go 350 kph faster than that. and you are dicing with guys this close, then we'll see.
Yep. Tough weekend for VCARB or RB. Daniel Ricciardo out-qualified by Yuki Tsunoda, then out-races Yuki Tsunoda. Strategy seems to be an issue with this team. And again, we talk about these fringe teams, and I say fringe teams like fringe points teams. Ricciardo probably had, if the strategy goes better, he could be in contention for points.
Yeah, maybe. Really did look like he kind of dropped off in that second stint, though.
It did.
But he did. I mean, not a great qualifying, but he had a really good race. So
and what do you, if you're a team principal and you're looking forward to next year, are you looking at the qualifying or are you looking at the race?
I would be looking at the race just simply because that's where the points are scored on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I think when, with RB, it's kind of where do they get the car in the right window? Do they get a car that's going to be good for qualifying, but then you're probably not going to have a great race. But if you get a car in the window where it's decent in qualifying, but it's going to be really good in the race. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of for a driver, you kind of have to make that choice as well. Where do you want the car? I mean, can you have a car that's good in qualifying, but then, once you get into the race, and if it's a track position race like this was, if you don't get a great start, you're going to lose a spot. You're not getting it back. If the car's not great with the tire deg, I mean, you're probably losing a couple more spots. Mm-hmm. And then if you're not paying attention to if the team is not paying attention to the strategy and how you want to execute the race, even when you're giving places up or you're giving performance up, it's kind of where can you make that up? Mm-hmm. Right? You can't, because you've got a car that's built more towards a push lap than it is towards we need this thing to be decent for the long haul. And so I think for Daniel, not the greatest of qualifyings, but I also don't think he had a car that was meant for qualifying. I think he had this thing geared more towards what he wanted to do when it was race day. And so that I thought he executed a really decent race, Adam. I really did. I mean, considering where he started, I thought he did quite well.
Yeah. And coming, I want to talk about his performances because they're always going to be a story, especially, while this Red Bull program is so up in the air. And, as much as they didn't make the switch before the summer break, there's still a chance here that, the season plays out and he might be in that Red Bull car next year, especially if they continue to see good races from him like they have since Canada. And if Sergio flounders and they want somebody, like I said, new vibes, and they need Liam Lawson in a car, right? Yeah. It really does. Liam Lawson is going to race next year in the Red Bull program. So
he may race before that.
yeah.
Sorry,
he may race before that. We are getting to that. Yeah. But, so I think it's one of those things where I think if he continues to put in strong performances, there might be some significant upgrade, not just a job, but an upgrade job. And I think that's an interesting storyline to watch. Not likely, but interesting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Adam, it's a good point. I was thinking about it earlier this weekend where, Liam Lawson is definitely, I mean, Helmut Marko's really pushing for Lawson to get a seat. Christian Horner, I think, also wants him in a ride in the Red Bull program somewhere. And I don't think they want to lose him. And they've got until, I think, second or third week of September before they have to make a decision on him. Yeah. And then he can go and be a free agent. But I think, when you look at this, it's Laurent Mekies, Peter Beyer, those are the guys down at RB. They don't want to let go of Daniel Ricciardo.
Okay.
They like him at the team because he brings a lot of experience with him. Obviously, the driving as well. He's done a good job since Canada. Once he started to learn everything and figure out what he wanted from the car, it's been a little inconsistent, but I would say it's been a little inconsistent for almost every driver who's not Max Verstappen on the grid. Mm-hmm. And I think
different racetracks are going to suit different cars. It just is.
Exactly. And it's trying to be the driver that's going to be able to figure that figure that out quickly and be able to help the team and guide them in the direction to get the car to where you need it to be. And sometimes the car just doesn't want to go there. But then you look at like Sergio, and if he continues to struggle, then it's kind of like, okay, well, if RB wants to hold on to Riccardo, then it's kind of like, then you would want to put Lawson against Verstappen, even though that's like sink or swim kind of territory for him.
That's Red Bull.
That's a difficult teammate to kind of have as your first full season of Formula One. But I mean, Lawson comes across as a really confident driver, and I don't think he'd be really intimidated by Max. But I mean, it's a different story once you get into it and get into the races and get into the qualifying, and now you got Max Verstappen as your teammates. It changes things just a tiny little bit. So I would be curious as to see like how they kind of handle those three drivers, because I don't necessarily think Sergio is safe at his at the team for next season, and Daniel Ricciardo is still a coin flip there. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Now, on the Liam Lawson discussion, obviously, Helmut Marko said going into this weekend, we talked about it in the last podcast, that Liam Lawson's going to be racing for them. And Christian Horner added to that on Saturday, saying, hey, don't rule out us lending him out to somebody else, maybe even this season. And Christian said something to the effect of, the decision is with Williams. And with Logan Sargeant taking a pretty massive shunt on practice on Friday. Now, that was coming Saturday. The elevation was up, the rain was on, whatever. Couldn't get him out for qualifying after that. Apparently, James Vowles and Christian Horner had a meeting, Tim. They did. That was Saturday evening that they had that meeting. I want to go back and just talk about Logan's situation first, and then we can move into this. But for free practice 3, it was definitely a mistake on Logan's part. I mean, he was pushing. There was no question about that. But pushing, like when your wheels touch the grass, and I think you got to know when you're in that point to just lift and just take your boot out of it. Like you gotta do that. I mean, you gotta. God, it was a massive crash. Happy to see he's okay. First of all, second of all, I feel bad for him because, like, look, it wasn't going that badly for him in the free practice 1 and 2, and I think if he had have built up the things in the right way, I think he probably could have had a decent weekend with a car that was fairly competitive, with new components on it, and that car looked really strong in qualifying. Obviously, because Alex qualified it well and then got disqualified from qualifying, which we should also talk about because that probably needs some explaining as well. Yep. But yeah, I feel bad for Logan. I don't know. Like, I think for his contract, like I don't know if he's got a contract that sees out the rest of the season, and I'm not sure if it's a contract that they gave him where it's like, okay, we're going to give you the first half of the season, see where you're at, and then if we need to make a decision on you after the summer break, then we've got some wiggle room within this deal to kind of do that. I'm not sure if that's what they have structured and how easy it is to just move on from Logan. And I don't know how smart it is to actually just move on from Logan. Like, look, I get James Vowles is frustrated, but it's the same thing like with the Sergio stuff. It's like, if you just parachute in, Liam Lawson, which is the discussion at the moment, plus also we got to add in Mick Schumacher into the mix because that's also a discussion as well. Because Toto and James, they talk a lot. Like, James used to work for him. They have a great relationship, so that needs to be discussed. Mick also candidate for that seat as well. But to just parachute another driver in who hasn't raced in a while into an F1 team. I mean, yeah, like you may have like one good race, maybe two if you're lucky, but it's going to be like up and down. Like it's not just going to be a straight line for them. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, you've got Logan already, and I mean, if he can just stay consistent from here on out, you have to do the math on that, right? Like, could he score a point somewhere? Sure. Can he qualify Alex? Sure, he may be able to do that. could Liam Lawson, who just gets parachuted into a car that he doesn't know, he doesn't have any testing time in it, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, where will that put him? What does that do to his confidence? Like what? So there is a lot that goes into it, but those discussions are happening. So Logan could be replaced before Monza or the race after that, or he may not be replaced at all, but it is discussions that are happening, Adam. Toto did rule out Kimi Antonelli. He wants to make sure that Kimi is going through with the program that they've built for him at Mercedes. Kimi's going to be running free practice 1 in Monza. Confirm that on my Twitter if people want to see it. And this just points the direction that, we're probably going to see Kimi Antonelli in that Mercedes seat next season. But I think Toto wants to do it the way where he's doing his F2. He's going to finish that out. He's doing our testing program that we've designed for him in the F1 car. He's going to finish that out, and he's going to do the free practice sessions that we're going to design for him, and he's going to see that out. And I think for Toto, it's trying to make sure that they're building Antonelli up enough in the confidence department so then when he arrives, or if he arrives, I should say, if he arrives, that, he's not deflated from driving a car that he's not used to against a driver who's got a ton of experience in Alex Albon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's mind games in there too, right? This is a whole psychological thing to all this as well.
And Albon was disqualified from qualifying. What happened there?
Yeah, the floor was too wide.
Too wide.
Yeah, so it's I don't know how, but apparently Williams, their equipment was saying that it was within the regulation.
Okay.
F1's equipment was saying that it's not, the FIA's equipment was saying that it wasn't within the regulation.
Okay.
And so they use these cameras that are set up at the front of the race car when they're towing it in, towing it out, and just making sure components are within line and within the regulation. And in that camera, the camera actually can tell you when you're kind of out of a window or you're in the window or whatever. And supposedly they use the same stuff as the FIA does, so they're always on the same page. But for some reason, the Williams one just didn't do that, and they were out by just a fraction. It wasn't like they were out of the window by a lot. It was just kind of a little bit. So shame for Alex, just simply because of what a great qualifying performance that guy had.
Yeah.
And it's a huge upgrade that they brought to the team too, right, Adam? That Williams had a massive upgrade on it this week.
Do you think it looked better?
It does. Yeah, they really they really turned out a good looking car, a car that, I think they're probably quicker than Aston Martin. I think they're probably as quick as RB. I think that whole I would say from fifth, the fifth team to eighth team. I think eighth is not right now in terms of the car. That's probably Aston Martin.
Wow.
And then I think you've got in that seventh spot probably Haas, and then in that sixth spot it's probably now either Alpine or RB or Williams, right in there.
Wow. That's cool. That's really cool. It's good to see that kind of jump. You want to see that.
Massive jump.
And James, listen, I was a big fan of the Williams car last year. I was really impressed with Alex Albon's drives. It'll be great to see Carlos in those cars. As much as, it's tough for Carlos to leave a top team. Holy smokes.
Oh, going in the right direction, I guess, right, Adam?
I think so. It's it's the opposite of Nico Hulkenberg, right?
Yeah. But you're going to a team that it appears things are headed in the right direction. It's mostly factory stuff with Williams now. It's just getting new equipment in there. How quickly can they get it in there? How quickly can they get it working? Bringing everybody together. That's the thing with Williams at the moment. Yeah,
well, it's exciting. Now, there was a little bit of a sticky situation with Haas when they arrived. Yeah. Dutch authorities actually went into the garage and said, you can race, but you can't leave. I guess there's some money owed to Dmitry Mazepin / Uralkali. Dmitry Mazepin being Nikita Mazepin's father. And just to remind everybody, Uralkali, it's a gigantic oil and gas and fertilizer company, I believe.
Fertilizer is their main source of business.
And they are obviously highly connected to the Russian government. That's why Haas ran Russian colors, even though it was red, white, and blue. We all kind of got the point. And they paid for a good chunk of the Haas seasons throughout the end of COVID. Nikita Mazepin probably considered, probably the most maligned driver of the modern era in terms of paid drivers. But anyway, I guess there was some money owed because after Russia invaded Ukraine, they were dropped as a sponsor by Haas. That payment was made Friday, although there was some question about this morning whether or not they'd be able to go to Monza and get ready because you have to have receipt of payment, and over the weekend the banks are closed. Tim, are they able to leave?
Yes. So as of this morning, as of us taping this, they have left the Netherlands. Finally. Okay. But there was fear that they weren't going to be able to leave. Now, that's not the team. That's like the equipment. So the car, the transporter, everything, like all that stuff. That would have been all seized. But yeah, no, things are good. Payment's been made. I think also you recall you got the F1 car that they wanted. I guess they were promised. So it looks like everything's all good, but it's funny how quickly Gene got that. Gene and the squad back got that all taken care of.
Well, I found it interesting that the Dutch enforced it. I wondered. I guess it was under Euro law that like the that would have been you have to enforce it, right? But I found that very, very interesting, considering that the Dutch are not too pleased with the Russians right now with that plane going down and with all the Dutch people on it a few months ago and that sort of thing. I thought the whole thing. I think Gene Haas, and this is just my conspiracy theory. I think Gene Haas probably thought, "Why do I need to make a payment to this guy? Where is he going to come after me?" And eventually it does catch up with you, and the courts did, and they ruled in Dmitry Mazepin's favor. So there you go. And any other news and notes, Tim, that you think? I want to talk about Alpine. That was the thing. Not for sale. Yes.
So heard from Flavio Briatore over the weekend. It sounds like they're not for sale. Like he said the team's not for sale. Like Alpine is not for sale. They want to continue on in this journey. I think it's going to be something like what McLaren is doing, Adam, where it's you buy your engine, your components from another team, and you simply go racing, and your branding is still as the car manufacturer Alpine. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how much Renault will be involved in all of that somewhere. Like I don't know. Yep. But it does sound like their power unit facility is going to be shuttered, and it sounds like it anyways, whether that's not been confirmed. And then outside of that, I think it's smart for them to stick around. I mean, the team has a lot of value. That value is only going to go up because F1 just keeps growing and growing. And then on the flip side of that, I think good for like a team like Mercedes. Let's say they were able to do an engine agreement deal, power unit deal for 2026 with Alpine. That would be good in terms of replacing Aston Martin, because obviously they're going to be doing a works deal with Honda. Mm-hmm. And so then for both sides, you're just going to be paying Mercedes for some components, power unit, and Mercedes is going to be making some money off of them. So there's that exchange at the same time. And frankly, I don't look, if they can get it all together, Adam, like I don't see why you would sell it. Like if they can figure this out, right? I mean, they brought it. Like I like the fact that they're, bringing in Ollie Oaks, like Oliver Oaks coming in. Like he's a young team principal. He's going to be like, I think he's probably will be the youngest team principal ever. Yeah. But no, I think that's good. That's a good start. I don't want to sit here and bash Bruno Famin, but he wasn't a team principal. Okay. Like he wasn't. Like Oliver Oaks has ton of racing pedigree. He used to be a driver himself. He knows the sport inside and out. And similar to what he was doing in the F2 program with High Tech, he's doing something similar, only at a bigger scale at a Formula One team. So okay. I like that. I like that move. I like that signing. We'll see how Flavio helps the team in all of this. I mean, he's really gone in and done a lot in a short amount of time. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Flavio did not mess around. Like when he got signed up there by the team. So
he's a man of action, no question. Yeah. So Tim, questions? Do we have questions from our good friend at Twitter?
We do. We answered the one. So Jay Money asks, like, any thoughts or updates on the Uralkali Haas disagreements? Any risk that Haas doesn't finish this season? We kind of really talked about that, but Haas will be able to finish the season. Where do I want to go next? We got a lot here. I'll go with Luis. He asks, do you think there's any truth to the rumors that Logan may get replaced before the season is over? I've seen reports of Lawson, Mick, and even Franco Colapinto potentially being subbed in. Actually, you know what? So we've touched on this a bit, but Franco Colapinto, I don't see any way that he would be subbed in. That would be a very long shot. For those who don't know, Franco Colapinto he's one of the Williams Racing's junior drivers, racing in Formula 2 at the moment. I don't see that one happening, but maybe the other two for sure. Fiona asks, do you think Max can still win the world? I would ask you this. This is from Fiona, Adam. This is for you, buddy. Do you think Max can still win the World Drivers' Championship, or does he get overtaken at some point but still win it at the end?
I mean, I think he's got to be the odds-on favorite now, even to win it, because really he's got to finish top 3. That's what he's got to do to maintain this window. You expect that it would be next to impossible to ask Lando to win every single race from here on out, despite that car being that good. Things happen, mistakes happen, except for if you're Max. Mistakes don't happen with Max. So I think if you're Max, you're still looking at that. Like constructors, they might be hard pressed to win that unless McLaren really screw this up. But Drivers' Championship, Max should still be thinking, this is mine to lose, and I need to win it.
Okay, so
that's what I think.
Do you think he wins it though?
I think.
I think he does.
I think he does. I think he's built a huge lead, right? Like he's still 70 points, and I know that's not a lot. If let's say he DNFs and Lando wins, then that's okay. Well, that's 25 points closer. Now we're having a different conversation. But right now, the way Max is driving, and I am a Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, McLaren guy, and I'm saying they'd be real hard pressed to beat this guy the way he's racing.
Hassan Salim asks, and this one's also for you, Adam.
Okay.
Imagine we're at the end of the season and Lando just misses out on the championship by 6 points, which he gave up in Hungary. I think it was 7, but either way, what are your thoughts on that?
On what?
It's a good question. I like the question.
Tim, give me yours.
No. We're going with you, buddy. This is you. Imagine we're at the end of the season and Lando just misses out on the championship by 6 points. So the points that he gave up in Hungary to let Oscar go by and take the win.
Oh, shit. I mean, it's going to be a question. That's a question that we'll be debating that all winter. I think I wouldn't look at it differently, because in that moment, you couldn't have known that things were going to go this way. You could have maybe predicted it. But I would say, here's what I would say to you. I wouldn't worry so much about the race where Lando gets out of the way of Oscar. I worry about the race, Silverstone. I worry about Silverstone. That is where the team screwed up. Yeah. And that
Canada
as well, Tim. Yes, that's a really good point. Canada too. Yep. I think Lando's, McLaren know they've left points on the table this year. They know they have. Every team does every year, but there's some silly moments where a team, inexperienced, not a championship caliber team yet, learning on the job, are going to make mistakes like that. And I would look at Silverstone or even Canada and go, that's where the issue was. It's not the team orders with Oscar and Lando so much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I agree with you as well. I mean, I think if you let Oscar go by, you're helping the relationship between the two drivers, because they're going to need each other next year for sure.
Yes.
No question about that. But if you don't let Oscar go by, and I mean, you do win the championship, Oscar's not going to help you next year.
Yeah.
Like, you're on your own. And then also with that, who's to say the team gets your back for next year as well, right? Because you disobeyed team orders.
Yep.
They may just be like, you know what? We got Oscar. You can be the number 2 driver for this season. Like there's stuff like that happens in the background too, right?
Yep.
I think Lando did the right thing.
No,
I still do. I still think at the end of the season, if we get to that point, and it's like Lando loses by whatever it was, 6 or 7 points, whatever he gave up there.
Mm-hmm.
I still wouldn't go back to Hungary. Because it would have been for selfish reasons that Lando had done it, and that's not going to help him for 2025.
No.
And if you're a driver of Lando's caliber, you're not there to win, just one world championship, right? You're there to win a couple.
Yep.
You are, or at least compete for a couple. And if you win, and if you lose, you lose out on this one, and you've also screwed over your teammate, there's a chance you may never win one.
Yeah. I don't know. Screwing over your teammates, that's not my favorite. That's not how you want to go down. That's not Lando's personality.
No.
I just don't think. So, yeah.
So
good question, though.
Yeah, it was a good question. It makes you think, though, right?
Yeah, you have to kind of work through it.
Yeah. That's pretty much it, Adam, for questions and stuff.
Well, listen, we've got one of the best tracks in the entire calendar ahead. And I feel like I've said that every week this summer, but Monza is just magic. And
Temple of Speed, baby.
Speed. So
Temple
Thursday,
Speed.
Tim and I are going to record another episode. It should be out by Thursday night in preparation. And maybe we'll get a few more things. Maybe Kimi Antonelli finally signs. Maybe we'll find out what Valtteri Bottas is going to do. Maybe Logan Sargeant switched out, although I don't think so. There's lots to talk about this week, and it's so great to have Formula One back. Tim, we'll see you Thursday.
Adam, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.